My name's Kirstie. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. I have been through the process, the Big Book Step Study process, with the Big Book Step Study sponsor and a loving God and a higher power. I still am working on my 9th step amends, and I continue to practice 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis to the best of my willingness. It is so great to be here. I'm like explodingly excited. I see like multiple people I haven't seen in a while that I'm just like, I love it. And I've just never been to this meeting. It's been a long time coming, and I've heard like such good things about it. So thank you guys for having me share today. I do want to set my little stopwatch here. It's my little higher power up here letting me know when I'm done. Okay, so there is a solution, right? When I first came into the program and someone handed me this book, I looked at the table of contents and I was like, great, there's a solution. Let me read that and then I'll be done. Just tell me how to beat this thing. That's all, And I was epically disappointed when I didn't understand any of it, the first time I read it. It's taken me a long time of keep coming to meetings, and going over this with multiple different sponsors, sponsor figures, meetings like this, definitely literature-based meetings to dissect what any of these sentences and words mean. It truly is another language. When I came in here, I felt very not a part of and very excluded, especially in Big Book Step Study meetings, because I couldn't talk. Are you kidding me? It's me. It's about me, right? And it was just amazing that when I kept coming, and now this is my favorite chapter, I see so many different parts and lines, my book is so highlighted, and just so much that sticks out to me, I guess I don't even know where to start. So when I guess I'll qualify a little bit when I'm starting here. So when I came into the program, I'm addicted to everything. Alcohol is a drug. Everything else is a drug. I've been addicted to a lot, including alcohol. So my story includes everything. When I came in, I was really nervous that I wouldn't be accepted into this program because I had done other things too, and I had an amazing sponsor that was replace the word alcohol with anything, it will work for you, right? Keep coming, please don't leave. And that saved my life. I've heard of people having different experiences with that, and my heart hurts because love and tolerance of others is our code, and this is what we do. We relate to each other, right? We don't compare. So thank God for the love that someone showed me, because I was gonna compare myself right out of these halls, pretty early on. So I was very physically addicted to the stuff I was doing. When I started to go to detox and started to hear this message, I heard commitments coming in to my facilities. That was the first I had heard of AA. And, I thought my problem was the drink itself or the drug itself, the substance, because I was physically addicted. I wouldn't have it for a period of time, and I'd shake and I'd sweat and I'd go literally insane. I would sleep the clock around, and I would just I needed the thing. So I thought that my solution was a reset, right? If I could just be locked up long enough and come out, then I would be fine. I just did too much, I was young, I was experimenting, I was in college, this, that. I was also really smart. It says in here, I had really good willpower in respect to other things. I was killing it, in a lot of ways for a long time. I was I could get really good grades. I was very athletic. I could do a lot of different things. So I was you know what? I'm just really smart, and I think I can figure this thing out. I actually also need alcohol and drugs in my life, because I'm kind of so smart that I'm bored all the time with this life. So I need an extra layer of stimulation. I know you guys can't do it, duh, you're just average people. But I was my ego was the size of the sun. And I didn't know it. I was walking around just thinking that's the way it is, And literally, so I fought to the death almost for my right to drink and use, and I was gonna try to figure it out in any way. I was a psych major in college, because I when I started doing drugs and alcohol, I thought it was amazing what it did to the brain. I was wow, it made me a completely different person, right? When I took drugs and alcohol, I went from this shaking, anxiety-ridden, lonely girl to this confident, amazing. Like, I was having insights that I swear no one had ever thought of in the world. Like, I was like a genius, and I was gonna like solve the world and like write a book on like physics and philosophy and like, you know, and like have really good connections like while I was doing it. Like, I was, you know, and Bill talks about it in here too, how like one of his excuses is like, well, philosophers have been drinking and coming up with majestic thoughts since the beginning of time, Lois. Like, you know, like that's like one of his excuses, and I could relate to that. I was like, yes. You know, the problem was is that that was kind of like at the beginning, and it became in glimmers, and then it faded really quickly. And like then what made me feel so free and like and gave me different dimensions actually came back and bit me, and I was a complete prisoner to it. And like I could never feel like that again, and I couldn't stop. So back to like detoxes and stuff, you know, like I would go to detox, I would get out, and I would be like, all right, like I'm basically cured. Like that specific drug is my problem. I can do other things. For a while, I tried to do like a little bit of that specific drug and some alcohol, and just not do as much. And I'd quickly find myself like escalating very quickly to how much I was doing before and surpassing that within weeks of coming out of detox. And I'd be like, silly Kirstie, just wrong experiment again, just got to go back into detox, reset again, you know, like I'll get this. Like years later, right? And like much escalation and progression, like I've passed many lines in the sand. I'm doing drugs I never thought I would do. Like it says, you know, soon like we combine different like alcohol and drugs to like be able to function and go to work because the downers are too much, so we add an upper and da-da-da-da-da. And we play our own little chemist, right? To try to like make ourselves fit in with life. And again, like that wasn't working either. Like I couldn't find the sweet spot anymore. So eventually, like my 9th time at detox, 10th, 11th time at detox, I could not figure this out. Like I was just like completely beat. I just kept hearing AA come in. That's the only thing that was consistent. I went to different detoxes. I had different experiences. I was on different drugs, all this. And the only consistent thing that was happening is that AA kept coming in for commitments, like no matter what facility I'd go in. So I finally like heard a message. It was actually from a counselor that worked in one of the detoxes. And here's like the solution, right, that comes in. It's like, okay, so, but the ex-problem drinker who has found his solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can genuinely win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. So that was the first step to like my solution, like it says in here on page 18. It wasn't psychiatrists, it wasn't family members with frothy emotional appeal, like, please stop, not this time, like not again. It wasn't any of that. It was really like an alcoholic that sat down that I could relate to. Like she had what I wanted. She was like this effervescent, like glowy spiritual being. And it's like everything I thought I would be when I was growing up. Like she was like a counselor and a yoga instructor. And I was like, she's living the life I was meant to live, you know? And then she literally told me, like as I was shaking and crying in that detox, I was hopeless. I was like a shell of a person physically, mentally, and emotionally. She told me like a little bit of her story, and I could relate to it on like a deep level. It wasn't just like the like kind of sizing up like the jackpots that she was telling me about. It was like the feelings, like she was like, no, I like couldn't relate to anyone. I was like wicked outgoing on the outside, but I felt so lonely. Like all growing up, I couldn't connect with anybody. Like I didn't feel like I had friends, even though they might have thought that like we were friends. Like I didn't feel it. This like loneliness, this like space between like me and you that I just like could not resolve. Like that's what she spoke of. And she also spoke of like some pretty nitty gritty experiences that I could relate to too, right? So like it was both at that time because it was really hard to capture my attention because I didn't know how to identify yet. But she also spoke of those feelings that I was like, no way were you that person and now you're this person. And she was not just telling me, she demonstrated it. She had this light. And it made me listen in a way that was involuntary, you know? Like I couldn't have like willed to listen to others. Like she brought the message to me in a way that was just so raw and authentic. And she told me, I'm like, what did you do, you know? And she's like, AA. And I'm like, oh, the commitments that have been coming in for like years now to these places? I'm like, that's what you did? She's like, Yeah, and she really like hooked me up with like some specific instructions. She kind of got me started on the step work for the first time, had me pray, like do some different things while I was in that facility. And she really told me to like get hooked up with an AA meeting. Like she gave me a specific one, like the second I got out. And my life changed. I didn't stay completely sober since then, but it certainly started my path of just like upward mobility and improvement. And I count that as like kind of my Ebby experience, where like she was my Ebby. Like she was like Bill had Ebby who came and had a new light, and he had been drinking with him before, and he was curious, like, what did you do, like, and that was my Ebby. And so like that's the first part of the solution to me, right? Like is like another alcoholic that's recovered, that's properly armed with the facts about themselves. And like the second part of the solution, which brings me back to why the reset button doesn't work, is like when I get out, like it says on 24, perfect, right? We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. So it's not the first drink that gets me drunk, right? It's the insanity that precedes the first drink that gets me drunk. I learned that in here. That's what I'm treating, right? Like, yes, it's a body and mind disease, but it does say in here, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind, right? Like, if I could stop drinking, then like it wouldn't be a problem. But my problem is that once I'm cleared, once I press the reset button, I'm out of detox, I'm physically not withdrawing anymore, I somehow find myself in that strange mental blank spot where I can't conjure up that suffering and humiliation, no matter how many AA meetings I go to and hear people talk about how bad it is, right? It doesn't matter. No matter how many times I talk about like how bad it was, that's not enough. I will find myself in that strange mental blank spot where I pick up again, right? I need something bigger than that, something that can solve that insane twist, that curious mental phenomenon that comes before I pick up. That's my problem, right? Like, and it even mentions in here too, like one of the last stories, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. I was like, oh, that must be the solution. Just like really, really study psychology and addiction in the brain and like figure out why I am so insane in my thinking, right? And like, that's almost like a step before the first drink. Like, I'll just untie the knot mentally that way. So I did the thing, I went to college, I like majored in psychology, I was like studying this book, I was listening to people's experiences on the fourth step without actually doing the work. And I acquired such a profound knowledge of myself, and yet I was still relapsing. And it's like, what is going on? I understand myself so well, and yet I'm still not engaging. And what they're saying is the solution is a spiritual solution, right? And like, what does that even mean? Like, that took me a long, long time to figure out, what is this spiritual solution? Now I have to wait around for God to bop me on the head and choose me. Like, I was really having a hard time with like, what can I do, And like, again, this is where I needed to keep coming to these meetings and have someone dissect, especially this chapter with me, because it literally says in here, like, that's the point of this book and this work, is to put your hand in the hand of your own higher power, which will solve your problem. And I'm like, oh my God, I actually have to go through this work without understanding first how it's going to work. That was hard for me, I'm very intellectual. I want to know what I'm doing before I do it. And people would just say things like, more will be revealed. Like, and I'm like, well, what's going to be revealed, What if I put in all this effort and it doesn't work? What if it's a big waste of time, And that's where I had to keep coming and keep seeing people had what I wanted and do what they did, And the people that had what I wanted did this work. They did the Big Book Step Study process mostly, like they were really, really engaged in this solution as a way of life. They immersed themselves in the tools and the principles and the step work. And so it's taken me many meetings and much willingness, and desperation at first to get this willing to really engage in a lot of these different meetings to find out that, I have to engage in the step work for myself. And since I've done that, I've continuously renewed step 2, and I've come to believe that a higher power can restore me. Because at first, I don't believe that. It's not until I start really engaging in the work that I come to believe. And then I fall out of believing all the time. And I take my will back, right? And I'm like running around trying to think this through. And then it comes to the point where I get desperate again and I let go and I pick up the phone or I do some step work and writing. I'll engage in like some step 11 stuff, meditation and prayer. And then something works out for me and I come to believe again. And I'm like, oh my God, this process never stops. You know what I mean? Like all the steps feed each other and it's cyclical. And that's why I love it, because I have not found a limit to like the freedom I can get emotionally and just like in life itself. So I continuously treat my problem, which is like the mental twist before that. It's the insane thinking, right? Because not only does that keep me from picking up the first drink, but it keeps me from being miserable. And it helps me to fully engage in this life and really, it just makes life worth living, which is what I needed. I needed a solution that was going to make life worth living sober. And that's what I continue to find here, so that's why I keep coming. So thank you guys for letting me share.